Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And today we have the unfortunate news of the passing of Wilford Brimley. Now, before I go into this, I want to get this out of the way immediately. Um, Wilford Brimley is mostly known to today's generation as the diabetes guy. That was a meme that was kind of a joke for a very long time because he used to do diabetes commercials, where he would talk about insulin and where to get supplies and stuff like that. And basically they were kind of just helpful little things for people that had type 1 or type 2 diabetes. And he's become kind of a meme for that, but I don't want to look at that because I want to actually look at his work and his actual career. And really, there's really two roles that I want to highlight, and one of them is a role in one of my all-time favorite films, which is The Thing, where he plays the character of Blair, and the other one is the movie Cocoon, which I think is probably what he's known more for in most general circles, is Cocoon. Um, but the ideas are kind of interesting, and Cocoon is also kind of what Cocoon is really what is in kind of his wheelhouse for the most part. Because the thing is, Wilford Brimley had a lot of family roles. Um, he had a lot of roles on very wholesome type of shows. He was like a grandfatherly type of character. A lot of the times, if he wasn't actually playing a grandfather, like he was in Cocoon, or he was in some of his television appearances. But the first thing I want to go into is his work in Cocoon and the stuff, and I'm going to save The Thing for last. Um, so basically, the idea of Cocoon is that these elderly people, these grandparents, Wilford Brimley kind of being the forefront of them, they get in this swimming pool that has these alien cocoons in it, and basically they get energized and they get youthful, and they don't actually physically change. But their energy goes up. They're stronger. They're better. It's basically like they have the strength and ability of a younger person, in this older person's body, and kind of the idea of reliving your youth. And I get that. I get the idea of the film. I think it's an interesting and fun little idea. I think that's why it was as popular as it was, and it went into kind of it became kind of a cult classic over the years because it really didn't. There was a sequel, I believe, called Cocoon: The Return, that also had Wilford Brimley in it, but I don't remember too much about that film. But the first Cocoon, I kind of liked his character. He was a sympathetic grandpa. He was, it was one of those things where it's kind of like, oh, you're in your golden years and you're getting older and older, and the idea that you can see that the not the light at the end of the tunnel, but you can see that the end is not going to be terribly far off. And now that they have this youthfulness and they choose to use it, they can relive some of those younger memories, which is kind of a nice little thing when you think of people that are older that kind of can't do certain things anymore physically, or mentally in some cases, to be able to go back to, even though they're still in the same body, to go back to the point where they have the strength and the power of when they were in their 30s or 40s. It's an interesting little idea, and I like that about Cocoon, and I like the fact that Wilford Brimley plays that character so well, and he reminds me a lot of, uh, you know, I shouldn't say my personal grandfather, but he reminds me a lot of a grandfatherly type. He plays that character extremely well. He comes off exactly how he needs to, very gentle for the most part, amusing at the same time. He can play that kind of, the family man, which I liked. And that kind of carried over into really a few other things. He had early in his career, he had some reoccurring TV roles. He had a reoccurring role on The Waltons, which was kind of at the time, it was kind of like a Brady Bunch ripoff for people that really don't know that. I shouldn't say ripoff, but it was a kind of a Brady Bunch type of show, which was, it was about the Waltons, like, yeah, good night, John boy. That's where that comes from. So he had a reoccurring role on that, and then in the late '80s, he also starred in another kind of family show where he was again playing this grandfatherly type character, and that show was Our House. Now, Our House it only lasted for 2 seasons, but it was about 46 episodes. and it was basically he played this character who was a grandfather. His son unfortunately is killed or dies in some way, and he has to take in his daughter-in-law and his three grandkids to live with him, and that's kind of the idea. And it's kind of like a dramedy sitcom, from what I can tell. I wasn't around when it was out, but again, it kind of highlights his role as a family man again, and it probably dives into a bit more of a deeper emotional idea than some of his that Cocoon did. Cocoon was kind of just like a fun little concept with a little bit of emotional stuff thrown in. This is kind of a bit more of a mix, even though again it's a kind of marketed as a sitcom. But I want to go now to my favorite role of his, which again is the character of Blair in The Thing. Now, again, whenever I highlight roles like this, I like to always say that Wilford Brimley had some amount of range. He didn't have an extreme amount of range, I wouldn't say. But in terms of this movie, this is definitely a jump fairly far away from what his normal was. Because the other thing that he did a lot in his early career were Western type of things. And not a lot of them are very noteworthy, but there are a lot of them put in there. A lot of the times he would play a sheriff or a blacksmith, or something like that in a town. He played a lot of side characters in Western type of films, not a lot of leads. And even this, he's kind of a side character, even though he has a major supporting role. But that was really what he was known for, was the family type of stuff and the westerns, and the western material, at least, that was coming up, because it was kind of sporadic. It wasn't anything that was terribly consistent. There was a lot of mixing in of those two things, but The Thing takes a jump completely away from that, and I'm kind of interested how Wilford Brimley actually did in his audition for that, because he does a very good job at playing the character of Blair. Now, the difference with this is that obviously The Thing is a straight horror movie, and the character of Blair is very kind of menacing at points during the film, because again, a little bit of spoilers for this movie if you haven't figured that out already, because I've probably mentioned it about a million times on this channel. The character, when Wilford Brimley plays Blair, Blair is supposed to be kind of the doctor. He figures out first like what the organism does to absorb people. That it changes all their cells on a microscopic level, and that it can, eventually it'll take over an entire organism and stuff like that. And he's the one that kind of figures out how the creature works initially, because he's the one that's examining all the bodies and stuff like that they brought in, and the various alien mutations and stuff, like the dog and the two-headed thing that they brought back from the Norwegian camp. So he's the one that figures out also that the remains need to be burned, otherwise they won't die, which directly results in one of the first death in the movie, the first character that gets shot in the leg. I can't remember. I think it's no, it's not Hopper. That's another character. But he gets shot in the leg at the beginning, and then eventually, he gets left alone with the creature, and he gets murdered. But Blair is the first one that kind of figures all that stuff out. And he's kind of the catalyst for the movie moving forward, because he's kind of this big question mark character that they push to the side initially. And he's kind of suspected of doing a lot of things around the base. And we're not 100% sure if it's him or if it's somebody else, because we don't really see a face. But the thing is that Blair realizes that they can't leave that Arctic research base, because there's a chance that it will come with them. And if it gets to a populated area, it could destroy the planet. So he actually deliberately destroys all the radio equipment, and then tries to kill. Well, he does murder all of the sled dogs they have, and then he also tries to kill the rest of the crew members, because he realizes that they can't leave. They can't leave. They all have to die, because if they don't, then this thing could reach some kind of civilized area, and then they can. But if they kill themselves and they freeze the place, then they can stop it. They can stop it where it is, or if they manage to, blow it up or kill it on some level, and then everybody else just dies in the snow. But obviously everybody else wants to live, so they just trap him in a tool shed. But there's a few little interesting scenes in there where there's one where actually Kurt Russell goes up and he goes into the shed, and it's clear that Blair has built a noose in the shed, because initially when they put him in there, there's just kind of there's not really any tools or anything. They just give him some food and stuff, and they drug him up a bunch so that he doesn't try and escape, and then they board up the outside. When Kurt Russell goes back to check on him, and he opens the little slide to see in. He sees that Blair has a noose in there, and I think that's because Blair, in the conversation, Blair says he hears somebody running around outside, And again, that's kind of the paranoia factor. It would be interesting to see his scenes with him just in that shack, because now he's alone. He knows that everybody suspects him. He's done some things that, he's basically stranded them all there. So I mean, the idea is that he might try and hang himself before the thing can come and kill him, which obviously doesn't happen because he does get infected at some point. But then you find out, a bunch of other stuff. But after Blair gets infected, his character changes completely, which I like. And you really only see him for after that, you really only see him in one really initial scene, but it's kind of an impactful scene because it's when he kills Gary, the guy, the main guy, who's kind of like the military. I think he's technically military. But it's at the end. All it is Knowles, Gary, and McCready, and Knowles is just kind of picked off right after that. But the first one to go is Gary, and Gary is very, very brutal. Where Wilford Brimley just kind of walks around the corner, and his face is very nonchalant in the scene. I love that about it. Where he's almost like, okay. He's just kind of looking around to see if anybody's around as he's like brutally murdering Gary by shoving his fingers through Gary's face and then infecting him that way by assuming, just sending his like tendrils and stuff into him and messing him up. And then you see in a later shot that he's kind of dragging him off as he's like fused to his hand almost. Which again, very good scene. But I love Wilford Brimley's acting in that scene because he's just he's just doing it very nonchalantly. He's kind of just looking around like, okay, nothing to see here. All right, we're done. And then, of course, he gets Knowles later on, and then McCready winds up blowing up his thing, the Wilford Brimley thing. And also, I think this is one of the only performances I've seen him in where he doesn't have his trademark mustache, which I think is kind of interesting, even because, everybody else in the movie, I think, has most of the, not all of them, but a lot of the other characters have beards and stuff like that. So to see him without the mustache is kind of interesting. But I do, again, I love his performance in the movie. I think that a lot of his character is a lot of the reason why that movie moves forward the way it does. And he also creates a lot of the paranoia because they don't necessarily know if he's getting out of that shack or not. And eventually they find out that he is. But the thing is that he doesn't, he just adds to everything that's going on because you don't know if it's him or one of the other people who's sabotaging stuff, who's putting out the lights, who sabotaged the blood. You don't know what's going on. He's just as much of a suspect as everybody else, but the difference is he's isolated, so we're not seeing what he's doing. So that adds even more to it. So, but again, Brimley's performance in the movie is amazing. I love it. But I think I've drolled on a little bit. Maybe a little bit too long on the thing role, but I do really like him in that movie. But I want to know what you think. What's your favorite Wilford Brimley role? What was your favorite thing he was in? Do you literally just know him because of the diabetes meme? As usual, put your thoughts below. I like to read them. Hit the bell for notifications. Hit the like button. Subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?